summer, I was tutoring students at our local library, and one afternoon, I was in one of the study rooms waiting for my student to come, and there was a tutor in the study room right next door who I could hear her. It's kind of an open air study room, so we could hear each other back and forth. So while I was waiting for my student, she was working with her student. I could tell she was working with a little boy, and she was teaching him how to read. Now, they were working on some words that are phonetically irregular, which you might have heard called sight words. And I heard her very clearly say to him, "These words need to be memorized by sight because they can't be sounded out. So you just need to memorize them." And I have to tell you, my hair kind of stood up on end when I heard that, because sight words are the biggest myth in the world of teaching kids how to read. For so long, we were told that sight words are words that need to be memorized by sight because they can't be sounded out. And that actually is such a myth and such a disservice to our students to teach them that way. Now, in this world of teaching students how to read and the science of reading and using research to really inform our teaching, I kind of live in this bubble because all of the teachers that I work with, the colleagues that I meet online, we all know that this myth about sight words is prevalent, but we don't believe it. We might have believed it in the past, but we don't believe it anymore. So when I was at the library and I heard this other tutor telling her student this myth, it just reminded me of why I'm here doing this work and making this video, because more people need to understand that is not true. Sight words are not words that we need to memorize by sight because they can't be sounded out. So in this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about sight words, what they actually are, give you a quick tip, and also link down below in the description box all of my other videos on this topic because I have quite a few. If you are new here, my name is Erin. I'm from littlesoflearning.com. I'm a former classroom teacher. I am also a tutor, like I mentioned, and a sub. And I spend my days teaching parents and other teachers how to teach little ones to read correctly and effectively based on the science of reading. And I, just like that tutor, used to believe in this sight word myth. I used to believe that sight words had to be memorized by sight because they were phonetically irregular and they couldn't be sounded out. Luckily, I have since taken many trainings, read many books, put in the countless hours to learn that that is absolutely not true. A sight word is actually any word that you can recognize immediately by sight. So my sight word vocabulary is going to be different from your sight word vocabulary and different from a doctor's or a lawyer's. Just depends on which words we are reading and that we can recognize by sight. What this tutor was actually talking about, not sight words, she was talking about high frequency words that are phonetically irregular. So those are words that it's really tricky to sound out the whole word because not all of the word follows our usual phonics patterns. So that's what makes them a little bit trickier. But we don't have to memorize them by sight, and we don't have to be scared of these words. We can actually teach our students to pull apart the sounds in those words and figure out how to spell them. Some of the parts are going to be spelled totally regularly, and some of them are going to be irregular. So I'm going to show you a quick example, and I'm going to tell you the phrase that I like to use when my students are spelling these irregular words to help them get that spelling in their brain so that it sticks. So there were a few high frequency words that are irregular that were really giving my students a hard time this past summer when I was tutoring. They were 3 words: could, would, and should. Oh my goodness, these words were tricky. So this is what I like to do with my students when we are learning those tricky words. They are irregular, phonetically irregular, but we don't just have to memorize the whole word. What we want to do is we want to pull apart the sounds in that word first. So let's start with could. K, d. 3 sounds, so they would write 3 lines on their board. Then we would go sound by sound. The first sound, k, it's spelled with C. That's totally phonetically regular. The second sound, was spelled with O-U-L. So what I would say to them is, it sounds like it's spelled O-U-L. And I would repeat that little chant over and over. It sounds like it's spelled O-U-L. Now that we get to the last sound, k, d. D is totally regular. So then they would write d. This is the only part that's irregular that we need to remember by heart, which is why we call these heart words. Not sight words, not a word that has to be memorized, the whole word because it's irregular. The only part that we have to remember by heart is that So I like to teach these words the phonics patterns that go together. I like to teach those words together. So for could, I would also teach would and should at the same time. It just makes sense. Keep them all together. I said they were brothers and the three brothers needed to be together. So then we would tap out the sounds in would. W, d. 3 lines. W, d. First one, w, totally normal. Second one, I would say it sounds like it's spelled O-U-L. That's the part they need to remember by heart. The last sound, d, totally normal. Now we have d, would. And then I would do that with the last brother, should. Sh, d. 3 lines. Then we'd go through. First sound, sh. My students already knew their digraph, so that was totally normal. It sounds like it's spelled O-U-L. That is the part we need to memorize by heart. And then the last sound, d, totally normal. So the only part in this trio of words that we really need to remember by heart is the And I like using that phrase. It sounds like it's spelled O-U-L. And you can use that phrase for all of your phonetically irregular high frequency words. So for example, in the word the, if they already know the digraph TH, that's totally normal. They're gonna get to It sounds like it's spelled with E. Just gives a little chant to it. Or if they are learning the word is, and they haven't learned that the S can represent the Z sound, so that's gonna be irregular for them. When they get to that, it sounds like Z, it's spelled with S. So just using that little chant, it sounds like blank, it's spelled with blank. Kind of gets it a little bit rhythmic in their brain, and it helps them remember it better. So keep that chant in mind when you are teaching these phonetically irregular words. I hope this tip was helpful for you. In the description box below, I have linked all of my videos all about heart words, high frequency words, flash words, so you can learn the difference between them, get some great ideas for how to practice them, and that you won't ever catch yourself saying, oh, that's a sight word, it needs to be memorized by sight, because we know that's not true. So this video is just here to spread that message that is not true. We can teach our children in a way more effective way than having them memorize whole words, which is so ineffective. It's what poor readers do. It is not what good, effective readers do. If you have any questions about this video or anything I share here on my channel, you can comment down below or find me on my website, littleslovelearning.com. I'd love to talk more with you about this and how we can best help your child learn how to read. Until the next video, have a great day. Bye.